January 2022, Las Vegas, Nevada. Hi, this is Janet, and I'm Sly. Back in 2016, we both decided it was time to stop working, buy an RV, and start traveling the country and the world. And once the RV was pretty much the way we wanted it, we started our travels, and we've been doing it ever since. So join us as we explore this country and the world, and maybe we can even meet up with some of you along the way. January in Las Vegas, Nevada tends to be a little cold, so it's kinda too cold to really do any hiking, but it's just fine to take a ride out into the desert surrounding Las Vegas and see what's out there. This drive took us south of Las Vegas down Highway 95 to Searchlight. There we hung a right on Highway 164, headed down to 15 and back up to Las Vegas. The ride down Highway 164 was interesting because it took us through a Joshua tree forest, and this is the first time we got up close and personal with a Joshua tree. Just as the highway crossed the border into California, we saw this sign for a historic town ahead, which was Nipton and turned out to be for sale. Now don't blink here because we're driving through town right now. So it's not a big town. It can't be all that expensive. I don't know why it's historic, but hey, the number was right back there, so buy it if you're interested in buying your own town out in the middle of the desert in California. So if you blinked, you missed it because we are now leaving historic Nipton. So this little drive was fun, and it was a good way to start the year. But just a few days later, we took another drive, but this time we went north of Las Vegas. Today started off as a much warmer day, so the plan was to head on up to Lake Mead and take a look at one of the old ghost towns that was flooded when they created Lake Mead. But instead of going there directly, we took a roundabout way of going there, and that took us through the Valley of Fire State Park. We knew about this park, but for some reason never took the time to come up here. This little drive-through, however, changed our minds. We are definitely coming back up here again, because this time around we didn't really stop, or at least we didn't stop long enough to really look around. We just kept on driving right on through it because we wanted to go up to Lake Mead. But we are coming back here, and we're coming back here soon because it's really pretty. Might be the prettiest parks we've seen up here near Las Vegas. It only took us about 15, maybe 20 minutes to drive through the entire state park, and the colors were really beautiful. But like I said, once we got out of the park, up over this rise, then we were looking at the area around Lake Mead, and that went right back to its normal colors of gray and brown. Not much to look at. And of course, the roads went to dirt. The dirt road we took to get us down to the town wasn't bad as far as dirt roads went. It was fairly smooth, washboardy in places, but it didn't really have some of the bigger ruts we had seen on some of the other roads. So really, any car could make it down here. Just take it slow so you don't get shook to pieces. We parked on what used to be the shoreline of Lake Mead, but now of course Lake Mead was quite a ways down below us. The hike to St. Thomas was about 2.5 miles downhill into what used to be the bottom of the lake. This is about 70 feet down, and from here you can see just how much water is actually missing from this lake. Here, there is absolutely no water at all, and you can't see it anywhere in sight. Man, that's a lot of missing water. The hike itself was really easy. The only thing you had to watch for was all sorts of big piles of poop all over the place. But at the bottom, you got to what was left of St. Thomas. And what's left really is only some of the old stone and concrete foundations that were there before the lake flooded. As we walked around town, we found the culprits responsible for all of those piles of poop. Yep, we spotted the donkeys that run free down here. But these guys are skittish and we couldn't get really close to them at all. So we just continued walking the town. I mean, as far as towns go, it's not all that big. Maybe a mile and a half from one side to the other. But what's amazing is that this town used to be surrounded by trees. And I'm not talking about some little scrubby things. I'm talking about some big cottonwood trees that provided shade as people back then walked the streets. This town had a grocery store. It had a hotel. It had a school that had 8 grades worth of education in it. It had a mechanic shop. This was not just some little couple of houses. This was a full-blown town with everything you needed. There was a river that ran through this town, and it provided enough water for this town to do farming. It was way greener back then than it is right now. It's hard to imagine that just a few years back, this was all underwater. So after we explored the town, we started driving south along the lake until we actually found some water, because we figured since it's nice and warm, this would be a good time just to sit along the shoreline, relax, read a book, and of course have our lunch with a view. And we drove for a while. We went over the top of a hill expecting to see water, and we did not see any water, because it's a long way down the shoreline near Hoover Dam before you actually find some water in this lake. And after a while of driving, we did finally find what was left of the lake that actually had water in it, and we were able to have our lunch with a view. Unfortunately, it got cold. No problem. We still had lunch, we had the view, we had blankies, and we were ready to sit, relax, and look at the water. We sat up there on that cliff looking down at the lake and reading our books for the better part of 2 hours before we finally started to drive back from the lake and back to Las Vegas. We've taken this drive before, and this drive takes us directly west into Las Vegas. And I gotta stop this because taking this drive at sunset is really hard. Most of the time, the sun is right in your eyes. But eventually, you will make it to Las Vegas. And with that, we end our first full week right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We still have 2 months here, and we haven't added any new states, and we're not likely to anytime soon. But we still have some excursions planned for the near future, and we're looking forward to seeing what else is in this area. But that's it for this video and for our first week. And as usual, I'll remind you that if you look down in the description for this video, you'll find a link for every place we went to, and hopefully that'll make it easier for you to find some of these places. And with that, Janet and I'll say goodbye, and we both certainly hope that you'll continue to join us as we continue to explore this stop.